Questions for the panel or questions?
Yes, questions for the panel.
For the panel. Okay. So we'll get started. Just because we want to get to as many questions as possible from the members. Javier is going to be joining us later. He is on his way on a train. Hopefully there's no problems like yesterday, and he can be with us soon. Avery, I haven't heard from, so I was assuming he was going to be here, but hopefully he will be here soon. Felicia is sick and ended up in the ER, so she hopefully is feeling better and will be joining us. She'll be putting out a statement soon. The other two candidates, there's been statements online on why they are not joining us, so I'm not going to go into that. I'm Alyssa Malaspina, one of the co-founders of South Orange Maplewood Cares About Schools. We are an organization that was founded opposing Park. And today, yay, we have sort of got our, the State Board of Education has come out with new rules and regulations that are going to be making it so that Park is not going to count for nearly as much. I wish I could go into all the details, but they're so new that I don't want to say anything wrong. But there's been some good changes made dealing with that. So we were a group started by that, and then we've melded over the years into this organization that talks about things related to schools. In schools in South Orange, Maplewood, and then schools around the country. We are a Facebook group. You can find us online. This is our third debate. And we're happy to have all these candidates here. We are doing it a little different this year. This year, we are doing it that the candidates, and I'm just going to read the rules. Each candidate will be asked one question, which will be randomly chosen from the questions submitted online or here in the audience. The candidates will then have 3 minutes. The candidate that is chosen will then have 3 minutes to answer that question. The other candidates will then have a minute rebuttal time. We will then get through 7 or 8 questions, depending on who shows up. And then we will have what we are calling a lightning round. So we're going to be having a lightning round. We're going to try to get as many of the other questions that we have answered by the candidates, but they only have about a minute. We have a hard stop time of 8:45. The library is nice enough to host us, but they need us out by 9. So because of that, we are going to just, get to as many questions as possible. We're not doing opening and closing statements just because we want to get the questions and all of that done. Joe will be asking questions, and I will be doing timekeeping.
Okay, so just before we get started, again, does anyone have a question that they want to submit before we get started? Because once we get started, since it's random, we're going to kind of be going like this.
Okay.
All right?
Yep.
Should I just say it?
Yeah, no.
No, write it down on that part. Here, I have them. Here. And then we'll put it in. Other than that, I think.
Okay, so I just want to go over the, number one, first of all, we didn't welcome everybody. Welcome all of you.
Yes, I'm so sorry.
And to all the candidates that are either crazy enough or good enough to take the time to sign up for this, we very much appreciate that. It is somewhat of a thankless process, and we wish you all the best in your run.
Thank you.
Do you have your question yet, or are we? Yeah, so we'll get started. Okay, so these are all of your names here. Now, I'm forgetting who was not here. So Avery and Javier are not here yet. So if their name comes up, we will pick a question from them and just put that aside and come back to it. That way it happens in order. So the first question goes to Narda. Narda is in green. You're welcome.
Thank you.
And your question is, and again, 3 minutes for your answer, and everybody else that's here gets 1 minute for rebuttal. The question is, what is your view on gifted education? Do you believe our district has an obligation in this area? Do you believe our district is currently compliant with the state mandate? If not, what should be done going forward? Please be specific.
Okay, so as far as the gifted and talented in our district, we are compliant with the gifted and talented in our district. There is a curriculum, there is information with regards to what we should be supporting. The state does mandate that we support gifted and talented, and I know that there is definitely a statute of what we need to support. I know there's several things that concern our families in this district, is that they're not necessarily getting the support that they feel they need. And also the other concerns that come up would be with regards to not everybody knows what support is available. I know that I've spoken to several people, and some of the things that come out, like GAP, they don't know what the GAP is, and that's not offered to all our students. So we probably need to do a much better job of how that information is disseminated and where it is, access to it, and share it across our district so that families know more and get the support they need.
So, in order to finish in a little bit, with a little bit of time to spare, so if we want to go down the line, let's see if I'm doing my math right. We'll give you a little bit more time on it. So, Marion, if you want to go ahead, we'll just go straight down.
Sure. So, for those I don't know, I'm Marion Cutler. I feel really bad. That was a very hard question to start with. I just want to point out it was a ridiculously hard question to start with. I think that the Gifted and Talented program is probably fine. I think that we're compliant. I would dare say that compliant should never be what our standard is, and we are meeting our standard. Narda pointed out a couple of obvious gaps. This is a program that has not been rolled out in a way that could be considered consistent, is not rolled out in a way that is inclusive enough. Definitely there are some issues about whether it does enough with people, with children who are double gifted. So yes, we're compliant, but Lord knows we can do better. And I would dare say that we need to figure out a way to do better.
Mike?
Thank you. Yeah, very tough question to start with, but I think both the candidates have answered it pretty well. We are compliant per the understanding of looking at our curriculum and what the state requirements are. But if you do talk to parents who are interested in the programs, the one question they've come back with every time is, we're not familiar with everything that's available. And we continue to ask, and we don't really get a lot of direct answers. I would follow up the sentiment of, we don't want to be compliant with anything as a standard. We want to be above compliance. We want to be achieving at a higher level. I believe this district has the potential of being one of the premier districts in the state. And so everything we do, whether it's gifted and talented or anything else regarding our curriculum or facilities or anything out there, we should be pushing ourselves to the next level. So anyone who's interested in gifted and talented, if you haven't been educated on it, we've got to do a better job doing that. We have to set a mission statement out there as to what we want the district to look like in the next year, 2, 3 years. I think that's one thing as a district we need to do a better job of, is setting some standard goals of what we want to be, and then holding ourselves accountable to those numbers. And I mean numbers, actual tangible numbers, not a goal of X.
Thank you. Bruno?
Hi, I'm Bruno Navarro. I am a father of a first grader, and I have 2 younger kids who are not yet in the system. They're in preschool. As far as the Gifted and Talented program goes, what the 3 main ideas behind the reason that I wanted to run was because I wanted to see greater transparency, accountability, and dignity. On the area of transparency, I want to see some of these answers. I want to see a better transmission of what the standards are and how we're meeting that criteria. As a candidate said, previous candidate said, compliance shouldn't be our end goal. You know, we should do better. As far as accountability, I do want to see measures of how the district plans to think about its goals going forward and hard criteria for meeting those goals. And dignity, if there are gifted and talented programs that work,
You can go over, finish your question.
Oh,
Finish your sentence. Finish your
You're gonna have
sentence.
15 seconds.
if there are elements that work for the broader student population, I would like to see those incorporated too, because good practices shouldn't be limited to gifted and talented program. It should be, it should be made to benefit a larger student population.
Okay. Thank you very much. Chris?
Hey, Christopher Traska. Yeah, I mean, I agree with everyone else. I don't know that how much of a debate this is going to be in terms of almost universal agreement across the board. In terms of compliance, absolutely. That being said, I don't think that mere compliance is the bar that we need to set. I think it's something that we should look to exceed. One of the issues that I have, and it's somewhat pervasive in a lot of the things that I've been looking at over the past several weeks, several months even, is with communication. You talk to parents about the program, a lot of them look at you like you're crazy. They're not necessarily aware of the ins and outs of it. They're not aware of the expansion of it in terms of how it pertains to their individual children. And I think this is something that the district needs to do a better job of defining, putting out there for everybody to digest, putting a clear plan around it, and then looking towards expanding that across the district. I mean, this isn't something that's just DI, and something that we're going to just look at as a tiny little carve out. I think this is something that the district needs to embrace, which in previous years I don't think it's something that it ever did, and we need to change that and push it forward.
Thank you, everybody. So we will look for the next question. Okay, Mr. Navarro, you've got the next question. Okay. The next question is, would you be willing to work toward making school lunch options healthier and to limit the amount of sugar in lunch and snacks provided at the cafeteria, and how so?
I almost feel like this is unfair because it's too easy. And I think we're all going to be in agreement on this, but absolutely, if you look at models in Europe of how students often get.
I'm so sorry to interrupt, Bruno.
How students get fresh cooked meals with chefs in the kitchen. I think that's an enviable model, and I would love to see us move closer to that. I understand that that's not necessarily applicable to the district, but any move we can do to reduce sugar, snack type foods, and offer real healthy, actual foods that don't have commercials. I think that's definitely a worthwhile goal.
Okay, and
so we'll go in the opposite direction this time. So
Can we just keep going in the same direction as we go?
would everybody prefer if we keep going in the same direction?
Seems to work.
Okay, that's fine.
Easy enough, see that shit.
Easy enough. Go ahead, Chris.
Not that I have a pretty easy answer. Absolutely. I think it's obviously.
sorry, Chris, that was my fault. I'm sorry, Chris.
Yeah, I think there's no question that we could do a better job of that. I think it's something that I would obviously support. That's sort of a no-brainer. I'm reminded of Jamie Oliver, I think, had done something on sugar, and it filled up a school bus, I think, with, I don't remember what the criteria was for doing it, but he filled up a school bus with the amount of sugar that kids were taking in. And when you saw it there, like physically out in front of you, you realized like what it is. I have 2 kids now in high school, and we've always made it a point of sending lunch, but a lot of their friends, and even our kids at times are going out, running around because there aren't options available to them necessarily in school. I think we need to broaden that. I think we need to make them nutritional. I think we need to expand that all the way down, obviously through the elementary levels. Even if we wanted to get aggressive with that, we could mirror something like Seth Borton's garden. You could look at gardens in schools. You could factor that into the curriculum. And there's other ways to kind of work it through, but definitely something we would do. I would look to do.
Okay, so Javier, I don't know whether you arrived before the question was read.
I arrived after.
Okay, so I'm going to take a second to reread the question and quickly explain that each person's getting one question asked, 3 minutes to respond, and then we're doing 1 minute each rebuttal time.
Okay, great.
After that, so we're just going in order.
And then we're doing a lightning round.
Yes, we'll get there. We're doing however much time we have left after that, we're going to try and get as many questions as we can answered by all of you.
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank
So
you.
the question that's on the table right now is, would you be willing to work toward making school lunch options healthier and to limit the amount of sugar in lunches and snacks provided at the cafeteria, and how so?
Okay.
So you have 1 minute to respond to the original answer.
So am I next or?
Yes, you are next.
Okay. So what I would say is yes to the question on healthier lunches. I'm vegetarian, pescatarian at times, so I've been able to, within my household, change that point of view. And then I guess the follow-up to that question is, how would I do that? I think in anything that we're about to do in regards to making any significant change, it's over-communicating, right? As a board, getting down to the superintendents, make sure that we have a comprehensive plan on communication on why this is done, getting some feedback, and then understanding what are the implications to the overall district, and how that would impact us from a financial perspective, you know, a family and health perspective, and then making sure that we have feedback after that initiative has been constructed, making sure that there's a feedback mechanism to make sure that it's working and if it has the full benefit.
Thank you. Narda.
Okay, another tough one for me. So as far as healthy school lunches, I definitely would support that. As far as the Board of Education is concerned, we need to understand more of what we could do to make the change in the schools with regards to our lunches. But I think all of it will probably boil down to financials, like how much does it cost? Schools like Pingree and all those great schools that have chefs and they have these free lunches and they're great. I don't know if we can afford that in our district, but I think definitely it's something I would love to incorporate if possible.
Go ahead.
Okay, so on one hand, I want to say no, because I definitely like chocolate. I need to put it, everyone's like, of course I would. I'm like, but in all seriousness, I would love to see it. I would love to see our lunches. I have kids who've been all the way through the system, and I have kids still in elementary and middle school. I would love to see their lunches be healthier, from drink choices to snack choices, from the snack choices that, because I still have an elementary kid, snack choices for what's brought in during snack time in classroom. And in terms of like, I think everyone here agrees that yes, it should be tackled. You know, how do we tackle it? What does it cost? You know, are there opportunities on a school level? Because I wonder how much of this needs to be, you know, I don't know, Bruno or Chris who said it, you know, the idea of what's going on at Set Boyden, is that something that can be replicated? But what about the farmers markets? Can we bring a farmers market to the school? Like, there are ways you can actually include the community, and I'd love to see a community-based response. You know, if it's not going to be something that can be maybe a senior project for our home ec, because we don't do home ec anymore, is there a way that we can actually, you know, what exists in our community that can be pulled in that's not about additional money, that's not about additional program, but that feels a whole lot more organic, forgive the pun, but a whole lot more organic to what our two communities actually want to be doing. I know both Maplewood and South Orange do farmers market. There are those sort of co-ops we might be able to look at.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would say absolutely yes. It's, you know, every decision that we as board members have the opportunity to make should always be focused in on what is best for the children, simply put. Our responsibility is that. But we also have a responsibility from a fiscal standpoint, and we have certain limitations and constraints. That being said, we outsource our food services.
Yep.
We determine who's providing those services. If we want them to modify the services they provide to provide more healthy, robust choices for our children, that should be part of our bid process. It shouldn't be that difficult to look at alternatives to it. Yes, there's going to be some cost parameters, but again, giving children the options of buying into different foods versus one option that may not be what we're looking for. I also believe that as a board member, we need to be fiscally responsible, but not always choosing the cheapest vendor. That is not what is in best interest of the children when we outsource our services. We need to look at what the services are being provided and look for the best services that match the vision of the district. And that, to me, is how you change the healthcare food process.
Thank you very much. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. The next question will be for Mr. Traska. And the question is, in special ed, how would you monitor student progress and progress measurement, incorporating norm referenced assessments? Would you like me to read that again?
You could definitely read that again.
All right. In special ed, how will you monitor student progress and progress measurement, incorporating norm referenced assessments?
Norm reference assessments.
Do you want me to explain?
Yeah.
Okay, this is not my question, but I will give you a brief explanation of norm references as an educator. It's basically you're looking at the progress of the student based on a standard, can the child do this? Is this the norm? The normal is this.
Yeah.
So this is the norm. We are referencing that to see how well the child is progressing. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. That's what I
Okay.
would have expected it to be. I thought it was something a little bit more detailed than that.
I'm keeping it basic,
The
simple.
wording
It is
was
more
a little
simple.
bit much, so.
It is more than that, but on the simplest level, that is.
Here's the thing. I've met the last couple of weeks, 3 weeks, with several families whose children have IEPs, 504s. One of the things that's been raised to me by pretty much everybody across the board is with tracking the progress of their students across their careers within the district. It's been something that pretty much been universal in almost every conversation that I've had. I'm a data guy, and I believe in not only gathering data, but the useful interpretation of data to try and figure out just how we're doing, where we have gaps, where we can make improvements. And that's both on the student level as well as on the macro level at the district level. So in terms of looking at something like that, I think it's a question of the board getting together with Dr. Morana, whoever's going to be in place, looking at the existing data that we have, trying to figure out where we can improve that, where we can leverage parents, leverage CPAC and some of these other groups to try and figure out where we would be best placed to expand exactly what we're looking at. One of the things that I've seen is sort of a disparate treatment across parents and families in the district. And I'm not sure how well that ties into that, but I would assume that if we've got standards in place and that they're universal and that they're widely accepted across the district, from the case managers all the way through, that this shouldn't be something that difficult to basically implement. Whether that's something that we capture on the data warehouse or elsewhere, that I don't know, but it would be something that I think the board should be able to look into.
Are they not? No, we're not getting volume.
So,
Don't ask me.
yeah, we can come and go, not at all. So we'll come back around. So, Mr. Parkman, it's your.
Okay.
But try to be
If you
into the
can use the
mic.
mic.
Okay.
You guys are gonna have
Can
to
you-
pass the mics back and forth.
All right.
Yeah, I
Can
think
you,
we're gonna have
can you
to-
repeat the question again?
Yes.
Is that what you did?
Hello?
It's on.
That works.
Okay. So, the question is, in special ed, how will you monitor student progress and progress measurement incorporating norm referenced assessments?
Wait, give me a second. Sorry. Everything got this. No, it's okay. It would.
Okay, all yours.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would reiterate a lot of the points that you mentioned. I am also a data guy. I'm within marketing, but data has become such a big part of my existing business, and using data as much as possible to make some key decisions is important. But I think we have to start at the leadership level, making sure that we create the right type of evaluation process, standardize that, and then make sure that we're monitoring across the board. You know, the intention is just to always have the kid, you know, I guess the kids' key challenges that they may have, and making sure that we're monitoring the performance and making sure that data is driving a lot of that, but also making sure that the children and the parents are part of that process.
Thank you.
Can you hear? Okay. So special education. In the few weeks that I've been in this process, I got an opportunity to sit and listen to Dr. Morano. We all know that we have a problem with data as it is, that we don't have any collection of data around how our kids are doing in special education, or necessarily, you know, how they're followed through in being sort of classified for special education. But what I do feel is it's not going to be my decision to bring in norm assessments. It's going to be the decision of the person creating the curriculum and the people that have the educational background for that. What I will do, though, as a board member, is support the decision, listen to what options we have, alternatives we have, and make sure that it makes sense for our district. Now, as a parent of a child or children that have been classified for special education, I understand the concerns around following that progress to ensure that they're doing well. Now, in elementary, I could say we have a lot of support, and I feel like that support was very, you know, nurturing and structured. And I can say that when I transitioned to the high school, I think that's where the challenges came up. So right now, I'm going to say that what's important to me is the fact that we have someone in place now who's willing to look at our data, willing to collect that data, willing to make sure that the standards are across the board the right standards for our children, and to make sure that they have the resources that they need.
Thank you.
Sure. So, while we've made really great progress in our special ed, there's been, no one's ever said I've been quiet before.
It's for the audio.
Oh, okay.
It's for our personal.
Sure. So while we, as a district, we've made some nice progress in special ed. We are paying attention to it. We have the right people, as Narda said, and we have people who are really passionate and committed to it. So there's a lot of really good momentum and a solid trajectory. As far as the norm, what did you say?
Norm reference.
That's. As someone as well who has a child who's been classified, my concern about relying on norm reference tests is that you could, using a single data point or even 2 data points, decide that a child no longer needs to be classified, which means that we are now doing them a disservice. So I don't want to rely on just norm assessments. I'm not doing the right name. I don't want to rely on them. I want to make sure that we are really looking at the whole child. What does the child legitimately need? If they've experienced success, what is it going to take to keep that train still moving with the trajectory we want? Norm assessments can leave children at a disadvantage. It's the worst thing we could ever do for these kids. Sure.
I think the most important thing we have to look at is what are we doing as a district to improve the special education services. And I'm very happy to see that, Dr. Picaro went out and hired someone, even though on an interim basis, with some extensive experience, and has brought in some extremely innovative and visionary ideas about what special services should be in this district. Unfortunately, it's a shame that it's taken that to occur, that we weren't doing some of these things before. We talk about data warehousing. We don't have any clue. We've not been tracking children the way we need to be tracking them throughout the district. It's great that we're talking about doing it. It's nice to hear that we'll get closer to it. It's going to take some time, but we need to be doing that. Again, go back to my statements earlier, what's best for the children? What's best for the children is us to understand and dissect the information to provide the right services that are beneficial to them. I would agree as well, the norm, I'm going to reference point, again, it's just a data point telling you whether or not someone is getting to the level they should. Let's make sure we're giving them the services they need to excel beyond that, and not pull someone out of an IEP that they don't need to be pulled out of, because that's what we keep hearing from parents we've met with.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
I agree with a lot of what Marianne and Michael said. You know, we need to look at whole child assessments and not just cold data points on a spreadsheet. I think the more support services we offer children and families, and you know, take into account other factors, sociological factors and psychological factors, and just social factors, you know, that's going to be important to keep the children receiving the help that they need to receive.
Thank you very much. So we'll run to the next question. The next question goes to Avery, who's not here. So as I mentioned before, I'll pick a question. So keep moving these. Good question. Correct. Good question. And put it here. And so the next question will go to Mr. Farfan.
All right, so
There we go. Okay. So this question doesn't apply.
No, totally applies.
Okay. Sorry.
It's okay.
Good luck.
So, the question is, why did you choose to run with the person you were running with? If you are not running with anyone, why are you choosing to be independent? Obviously, do not read the same.
Yeah, you
So,
so I am running with someone.
okay.
I'm running with Anne-Marie. And the reason I'm running with Anne-Marie, I got to talk about the process of me getting involved with the election. So I've been in Maplewood for around 3.5 years. I have a 4-year-old, Jonah Wolf. He's going to begin kindergarten next year. But one of the things that I decided to do when I first got here with my wife was to get involved as much as possible within the community. So we got involved with Maru Church, we got involved with the Community Coalition. I actually am also an adjunct professor at Seton Hall in marketing. And I found out, and through that process and through meeting folks within the community, I met Anne-Marie, and she started talking about some of her key initiatives as she's on the board, and started to think about, and she was going to re-election this particular year, and I asked that I wanted to get involved. And through that process, she was like, well, there's an opportunity, please, you know, learn more about it. I got to have a few focus groups with folks in the community, and I was just like, this is what I want to do. And one of them is I want to make sure that there's a whole new set of folks coming into this community that are coming from Brooklyn with a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old. There's always 2 kids or 1 kid, and you know, they're not involved with what's going on. And I'm part of that community, and I want to have a representation of that within the board. The second piece of that is I'm also, you know, a person of color, and I've come from humble beginnings, and in New York, and I've seen the benefit of, you know, a great school system, of great teachers, and trying to give that back to the community, to my son and to all the kids in that is an important thing to me. And I'm an educator by nature. I have a master's degree from Columbia University's Teachers College. I actually started a nonprofit when I was in my university at SUNY Binghamton. So, okay, thank you. And then I also helped launch a New York City school called the Urban Assembly School of Business for Young Women. I wrote a proposal for Bloomberg. There was 150 proposals, and we were one of the 10, and it's 12 years in the making. Helped with the curriculum, helped with the administration and recruiting for that. So all those experiences I thought could be beneficial to being part of this.
Thank you very much. Right on time. Ms. Green.
So I am running with Michael Oskowski, and the question is why am I running with Michael Oskowski? Well, I'll start off with why I'm running in the first place. So I'm a parent of 5 children in this district, 3 which finished school here. I'm a product of this district as well. I found it was time for me to get more deeply involved. When my children were younger, I would spend 3 days out of the week in the schools, focusing on them primarily. And I think now I have an opportunity and time to focus on all the children of this district that matter to me. I'm running with Michael because we both grew up here. We love it here. When I remember looking at articles that said we were like the top 25 places to live in the country, and all of that stems from the schools that we have here and our community. And I want to get back to that place where we are top 25, where our children are getting all they need. Again, I'm just doing this simply for the children of this district.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me. So I have 4 kids. Have gotten 2 out of high school through the district. As I said, I have 2 more coming in. I have a middle schooler and an elementary. I am, as my husband likes to joke, it's taken us 14 years, but we're almost out of elementary school, which is pretty amazing. I am a huge fan of these 2 towns. I moved here 18 years ago. I live in South Orange. I love this place. I gave up my time over and over and over again to make things in this town better in some way. I'm on the board of directors of Cougar Soccer, if anybody's had experience. Mike knows I'm all in. I'm an all-in person. I'm running with Chris. So Chris and I have partnered up. We've partnered up because we share a solid appreciation for getting to data points. A lot of decisions are being made in this district that don't have data to support either whether it's the right decision or if it's a decision requiring course correction. I know we're going to have a data warehouse. Those things are starting to happen, but you're going to hear more and more. We want data points. We want to measure what matters.
Thank you, Ms. Oskowski.
I'm running with Narda Green. I've known Narda since we both attended Jefferson in 5th grade, and we're products of this phenomenal district. When I had a chance to decide on running alone or running with someone, it was pretty easy. I wanted to run with someone who I felt would bring value to the district. Narda is caring, she's genuine, she's sincere, and she's ultra committed. She has 5 kids, 3 have already gone through the district. She has 2 that are juniors in high school. For her, this is easy to not take the time and effort to go into this position, yet she's decided to do that. I myself, I have 4 kids. I am overwhelmed, yet I'm making the commitment to get involved because I'm that committed to this community that I moved back into in 2003. We should be and will be, if the board makes the right decisions, a top school in New Jersey in the next 3 years. Simply put. And if I can't get it there with the colleagues on the board, then don't vote me back in 3 years. That's the data, that's the results we need. We gotta stop with this infighting and all this other shit that we do and focus in on what's best for the kids. That's why I'm running.
Thank you.
That's why I chose Narda.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
Hi, yes. I think the reason that I ended up running alone, well, the reason I ended up running was primarily because my daughter was in kindergarten last year and came home and told us what we ended up finding out was a lockdown drill. The second time it happened, we found out 2-3 days later at the dinner table when we were talking just about our week, and she ended up in tears. And the more I found out about this, the more I started to talk to other parents, the more I realized that other children were being traumatized too in the schools. I was horrified at this idea that a place that my daughter loves so much could cause her any trauma, and yet it doesn't seem like it was thought through, and the psychological well-being of our children was sort of being ignored. I understand the need for safety measures, but it was really that experience that sort of triggered it. And when I talked to people about it, I asked them if they were interested in running, and nobody has the time to do it, and so I figured I would speak for those who weren't being spoken for.
Thank you. Mr. Trustin.
Why am I running? Now, as opposed to in the past, work has always been sort of a major time drain, as well as presence in the country or even in the state. I have the time now. I've made the time now. For a number of years, I've identified a number of issues within the district that have driven me nuts, like many of you. And I complain, and I try and get them fixed through the normal channels. But there comes a time where it's, enough talk, put up or shut up, so to speak. And I couldn't sit idly back, looking at the direction of certain things in the district, a number of major decisions that are coming up with regards to the super, with regards to the capital plan, the bonds, and not be an active participant in that. In terms of why I'm running with Marion, that should be obvious, I guess, when you come to know the two of us. We're both straight shooters. What you see is what you get. And I think that's important for people to understand that in the board member.
Thank you. All right, so this is the last full question we'll do this way with a 3-minute answer and everyone's response. This one goes to Mr. Laskowski.
Wait, no, Marion had it.
I'm sorry. Did I?
You forgot about Marion. So Mike goes and then Marion. Sheesh. Sorry about that. Shucks.
Okay.
Hey, put the point.
All right. Sorry about that, Marion.
All right. I'm not shy.
Okay. This is a long one. What are your plans and order of priority for approaching the following problems in our school system? Overcrowding of schools, old and decaying infrastructure, need for integration in all schools, excessive spending on sending students with special needs outside the district.
You're going to need to
3 minutes, not 30
You're going to need
minutes.
to repeat this. Overcrowded schools.
I'm happy to repeat it. Ready?
Repeat it again.
I'll repeat it. What are your plans and order of priority for approaching the following problems in our school system? Overcrowding, old and decaying infrastructure, need for integration in all schools, excessive spending on sending students with special needs outside the district.
Like 4 questions.
I know.
Yes, it is. So answer as much as you can.
Can I give him my 3 minutes? That's a big question.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, we'll repeat it. If anybody wants the question repeated when it's their turn, I'm happy to repeat it.
Take a breath.
Okay, so sadly, first and foremost, we have old facilities that are falling apart. And that's not good from a safety security issue for the children of this district. That needs to be addressed immediately. It does not need to be addressed with a $131 million bond. You can find other ways to do that and maybe lessen the load of that bond. That's got to be done. Otherwise, why are we sending kids to school if they don't have the proper facilities? They have leaky roofs, they have mold, they have things that are just unacceptable for a township of Maplewood and South Orange. Second, integration of schools. We should be doing it. There's no reason why we can't do it. I don't agree with the 5th and 6th grade middle school redesign, reconfiguration. It just adds to additional transition of students during their cycle from kindergarten to high school. We have an achievement gap in this district, and the gap's not going to go away, and I'm not going to tell you that I can solve the gap. But what I can tell you is if you meet with the experts out there, and I'm not an educator, so I try to surround myself around people that are, students who are lagging in their studies in math and English and are not achieving at the levels of their age, adding additional transitions to their cycle will draw a drain on them. They seem to not excel as quickly as they should in those transitions. So if we're going to add a transition and move kids into another school just because we think 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 should be together for integration, that's not the solution. That's not helping the students from an academic standpoint. I agree we should integrate. I think there's other ways to do it. I think personally we could look at a Seth Boyd and a Tuscan and make them a Marshall Jefferson. We already have the infrastructure. They're both become K through 2 school and a 3 through 5 school, do exactly what we already do in Jefferson and Marshall, and we did it back in the day specifically for integration. And it works. If you talk to families at those schools, they like the fact that they have kids that are integrated in those environments, and they seem to be excelling. If you look at the achievement gaps of those schools versus a Seth Boyd or a Tuscan, they're much different. So you want to integrate the schools at an earlier stage, let's do it. But again, you don't need $131 million to do it. We can do it very simply, okay? Overcrowding, unless we can change the water in the town and people stop procreating or moving here, I don't know how you're changing that, but I can tell you, we need to be visionaries, we need to be proactive, not reactive. We had a chance to buy a school in our town in South Orange, we chose not to. We needed the infrastructure, we didn't get it. That will not happen if I'm on the board and I'm involved in any of those opportunities. I will make sure we scream and yell and find infrastructure for us to move into. Because we're not going to shrink. We're going to continue to grow. We may not grow at the exact levels that those estimates have, because you also have children that move out of district, that go to other schools. So just because we have a lower elementary school increase in some areas, we are going to move. And lastly,
we'll put another.
What was the last question?
Yeah,
Special ed out of district.
We'll put another minute on this one. So
I am not savvy enough to tell you that I know all the solutions about special ed. I think for sure we have to look at this and talk to the experts, and Dr. Morano seems to be very knowledgeable. If we as a district can come up with a way to provide services that are above and beyond the level we couldn't before, which is why we had to send students out of district. If we can find a way to do that for a percentage of the students, we send 114 students out of district to private schools. We send 68 to other districts. I'd be happy if we could provide services for 10 to 15% of those. Families moved here for a reason. They want their children in the district. If we can provide those services, let's do it. Let's find a way to effectively and efficiently do it. Again, provide services that are best for the students. If we can't do that, then we're going to have to pay the bills to send them to a facility that can do it. And we have been, and that's good. But I think we can bring some of it back in-house, as long as we're not jeopardizing the service level of the student.
So
Thank you very much. Let's give everyone 2 minutes to answer this one, since this is a ridiculously long question. Mr. Navarro, you're up.
With 3 young children, I've been looking at the capital improvement report and seeing the pictures of ceilings that are caving in, boilers that look like they're from the 1800s, rotting window frames, and the over-reliance of temporary classrooms, which at what point do we stop calling them temporary? Some of them are so old that they are literally crumbling and rotting, and they smell damp, and where it smells damp, it's not a stretch to think that there's mold in there. So, I do think we need to spend the money, and a lot of these maintenance issues have been neglected for so long that it sort of boggles the mind. If we have a leaky roof in our house, we don't wait until the ceiling collapses to fix it, because the longer we wait, the more money it's going to cost. Sorry, what was the
second one was? The next one was deeper integration across the schools.
the overcrowding of schools. you know, this is something that's already affected us and so many families that we come in contact with and we have in our circle and who live in our neighborhood, in our street. When we bought our house just a little over 3 years ago, the buyer had this wonderful letter about how she loved the community and how Clinton Elementary was fantastic and what a great experience her children had there. And we're about 6 blocks away, and we thought, this is great. We can walk to school every day, and wouldn't it be fantastic? You know, we can take all the kids on an adventure every morning. And we went to register 2 years later, and they were full. And we ended up going to Marshall, and of course we love it. We had a great experience there, and we would like to send our next 2 kids there too. But the overcrowding issue is already affecting us, and you know, I do like the plan of redistricting. I think it solves a couple of issues, not only overcrowding but the integration. You know, if everybody has a stake in every one of the buildings and every one of the schools in Maplewood and South Orange, the better off all of these schools are going to be, and the less stuff is going to fall through the cracks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tressi.
Thank you. That's a lot, 2 minutes. Because I think this is a major focus in the district on all fronts, to be honest. Where do I want to start? In terms of overcrowding, that's the capital plan, the way I look at it. You are now looking at $93 million out of the potential $217 million in terms of improvements, security, safety to the buildings, the school infrastructure. We've got, and I can tie the integration in with this, although I think those things should be separate, even though Dr. Carr and the board seem to want to combine it. I think it's $34.5 million associated with the middle school realignment, I guess I'll call it. In terms of the elementary integration, I haven't seen anything on that. As far as I know, I think the plan is supposed to be out this month. I know there's feedback gotten, but I haven't seen anything formal coming from the district to opine on it. Definitely in favor of the capital plan. I think it's something that needs to happen. I mean, this is just kicking the can down the road if we don't do something about this stuff. And when you look at a lot of this, it's patently obvious. The infrastructure, I think, is also part of that. So the overcrowding in terms of expanding the buildings plus the infrastructure, I think, is all part and parcel of the same thing. In terms of building out, when you're looking at the integration piece, at least for the middle schools, I know part of the rationale, at least the way I look at it, is while you're going to expand, you know, move 5th grade into the middle schools, it's going to free up capacity in the various elementary schools, which is going to allow you that, you know, extra space that you need, A, to get rid of the portables, B, to relieve or at least alleviate a good deal of crowding. The fact that we're crowded, I think it's 28%. Of kids in the district don't go to their zone school. If I remember correctly, there was some percentage that was ridiculous. I'll be really quick on the other stuff. In terms of out-of-district spending, numbers are huge. I believe, and again, this is off the top of my head, but I want to say it was about 10% of the overall district budget just for that piece. You're looking at 170, 180 kids that are part of that, although I think it's about 1,500 odd, maybe probably a little bit more in terms of the overall special ed population. So you're looking at a major chunk of that. Something I think we need to look at. We got to examine more closely and try and figure out a way to bring some of these kids at least back in the district.
Sorry, you got a lot in there.
Is it mine?
It is your turn. Would you like me to read the question again?
I think I got the question. It's basically 4 questions, right? It's overcrowded, infrastructure.
30 seconds.
Yes.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. So on the overcrowded infrastructure, I support the capital investment. I think we need it. Again, we don't want to keep on kicking it out to the next year. Next year, it's going to continue to have challenges. I mean, from a overcrowdedness, we have around 16 failing portables, and we need an additional 10 to 15 classrooms. I know that from increase in population in the past 10 to 15 years, it's grown the population from 6,000 students to now over 7,000. So that's going to continue to grow. So we need to make sure that we're focused on that. One other thing, I think we also have to focus on leadership. We have to get the right superintendent to make sure that that capital investment is done the right way and is communicated the right way to the overall district. In regards to integration, I do support it. I do agree with having multiple transitions for the child might be a little tough, so we need to really look at that integration plan. Make sure that it's implemented and it provides the support to all kids in the community, but we want to make sure that we're doing it right. So again, it goes back to leadership. And then in regards to access, in regards to the spending on special ed, I think it starts with the assessment. You know, I know that we have a new director there that's going to provide us some leadership there. Let's look at the assessments, let's do them right, let's figure out where we can actually improve that process and still provide the support to the family and the children.
Thank you. That sounds great.
Okay, so as far as the decaying buildings and the safety issues, I think definitely we need to make sure we take care of that right away. I agree with Michael that we don't need to spend all the money on that now, but definitely on all what we need to spend on right now is safety and security, those things first. As far as special education, so we are a similar district to Montclair, and got some indications that the state provides Montclair $1.3 million more in aid for special education. And we're equal in size, almost. So I think what we need to do as a board is try to figure out how we can get some more of the aid from the state to help support our students that are out of district. I think they're looking at it now, as you said with Dr. Moran, she's definitely looking at that now to see how we can bring back more students here and provide them the resources they need. So I think state aid is probably something that we need to look at as a board. As far as overcrowding, you know, we did have that opportunity to purchase something. We didn't look, we weren't thinking ahead, and I think it's kind of late now in the game to think ahead. We're going to have to try to figure out how to tackle that. One of the things that we've spoken to some parents and community members is the relationship that the board should have with the town council to ensure that when developers come in, we understand what we're getting and how it will impact us as a district as far as all those apartment buildings and so on that we're getting in our district. And as far as integration, we definitely need to focus on integration. We also had an opportunity to look at, again, Montclair. I looked at how they were set up. They had the same kind of issues that we had here as far as integration. They were, you know, they had a lawsuit as well. And they tackled it by looking at creating magnet schools. So Seth Warden was a demonstration school, for example. You know, and I think it got a little neglected over time. My thought was maybe had Seth Warden had an anchor school, another school in the district that was similar, that people had a choice, then you automatically, you know, help with integration in that aspect. But I think that's something that we look at now, and I also believe the board might look at something like that in the future. I don't know if definitely transitioning children from 5th to 6th and 7 and 8, it's going to impact the children that are socioeconomically disadvantaged. It may not impact all our children, but it'll impact the ones that really already falling apart. So
thank you.
I think we're thinking about that.
Thank you. Ms. Cup.
Sure. I think a huge shout out first in terms of overcrowding has to go to the teachers who are dealing with the overcrowding, and they've been dealing with it for years. I told you earlier, I have a daughter, my oldest daughter graduated Columbia High School in 2016. I went back to her elementary, the records I kept for her. Her first grade class, because kindergarten was half day at that time. So she entered the district in first grade, and her first grade class was 16 students at South Mountain. and her second grade class was 18 students. And then she had 18 students, the rest, or 18 classmates, herself included, the rest of elementary in South Mountain. My youngest is at South Mountain right now, and her 5th grade class has 26 children. So in just that short, 10-year span, you've now added, I can't do the math fast enough, like 30% in terms of class size, and our team, amazing job. So huge shout out, because we're making a lot happen. We can make more happen, but we're making a lot happen. In terms of the overcrowding, we definitely need to deal with it. We have, and actually I'm going to start with infrastructure. We as a district have been issuing bonds on a very regular cycle. And they're 10 million, 15 million, and we have replaced boilers, and we've replaced some windows, and we've put fire breaks in the high school. We've been doing a lot of work. But we are at the point that we can no longer chip at it from the outside, these sort of like $10 million increments. So I do support the $93 million bond that needs to go in order to deal with shoring up hardening our border, so to speak, of or the structure, the infrastructure, from a safety and security standpoint. I'm definitely in support of that. In terms of the integration, I fully support integration. I am not supportive of this idea to reorganize middle school. The achievement gap shows itself in 3rd grade. Pedagogy after pedagogy, study after study says that when you start to transition kids at 5th and 6th grade, the more transitions, as Mike alluded to or said earlier, the more transitions in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, it has a direct and negative impact on achievement gap. And we, as a district, have an achievement gap that is ridiculously stubborn. Adding to it or being any part of a negative impact or adding another negative variable is not what is best for our students. So I cannot support it. There has to be a way, and whether it's magnets, or can we make, for example, can you make Seth Boyden a STEAM school and Marshall an art school? Make them magnet schools, make them self-select schools. There are other ways that we can look for integration. The last part, and I do believe...
I'm sorry, I've got to cut you off.
Sorry. Fair enough.
All right, now, I'm cutting you off for yourself.
Oh.
So.
Get ready.
I'm ready.
I tried to give everybody leeway on that one.
Thank you.
It was very long, but all right. Question. Sorry. I'll leave that anyway. What member or members of the current Board of Education do you align your views on major issues with?
That's a 3-minute question.
It is.
Wow. Sorry.
You go to the next question.
I'm actually going to say, and with all due respect for the 9 members who give a ridiculous amount of time away from their families, and I have nothing but respect for anyone who volunteers, I'm choosing actively not to answer that question. I don't want to, I'll talk about myself, but that's ridiculous.
You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds, so go ahead and talk about yourself.
Yeah, it's so inappropriate.
That's not an appropriate question.
I just think that anyone who volunteers, their time should be applauded. And so therefore, I align with anyone who gives back to this district. I just, in whatever capacity.
All right, so we'll go around. Mrs. Olszewski,
You can talk about something else if you want. You got 3 minutes.
Or can you get a different question?
No.
You just-
No.
You could just go quickly.
Yeah.
1 minute.
Because yes, 1 minute each.
Nobody like that?
Yeah, I would look. There are 9 members. Sorry, there are 9 members on the board. They all chose to make sacrifices and run, and were elected. Do I agree with all their views? No. They make decisions, and I think if we agreed with all their views, we wouldn't be running. So I think we have to look at it this way. Change is good when we're not moving in the right direction. And right now, our district seems to be moving downward. If you look at our statistics from a rating standpoint, no matter what scorecard you want to look at, our district has dropped. We're no longer the premier in Essex County. We're probably ranked 7th out of all the county schools around. So we got to make some changes. So whether I agree or disagree with the views is really, that's why I'm here. I'm here to give you a different view. I'm here to give you something that's new. I want to rock the boat a little bit. I want to question. I love the fact that Chris and Miriam talked about data. Love data. Let's talk about what the data is bringing us and what we can do about that. The board's responsibility is to bring ideas to the table and give the district a vision, and then our superintendent's job, he, she, they, is to implement it. And we hold them accountable to doing that.
Thank you.
That's what we need to do.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I'm not going to name anybody by name, but what I do like to see is healthy debate. I do like to see issues being tackled thoughtfully and in a nuanced way. And you know, as a former journalist, I'm used to asking questions. And you know, when somebody doesn't answer a question in a debate or in a meeting, it makes me want to ask more questions. And so, you know, I think there needs to be a healthy difference of opinion. There needs to be a diversity of thought and experiences on the board. And you know, I would say that that's one of the reasons that I'm running, is because I'm not an educator. I come from a journalist background. I was, you know, I'm kind of cliche. I moved here from Brooklyn. I grew up in Queens, and you know, all of these issues of diversity and integration are something that I've lived with my entire life, and so I hope I can bring that voice to the board.
Thank you, Mr. Trust.
Thank you. Yeah, this is easy. I'm not going to answer that. That's kind of crazy. I wouldn't be here if I agreed with absolutely everything the board did, and the direction, you know, that they've taken in many cases. But I also wouldn't be here if I didn't think that I could work with the existing board. I mean, these are your colleagues, these are your, you know, fellow residents. I mean, everybody's a volunteer giving time to, and I think everyone's got the same ultimate goal. I don't believe anybody has ever taken on this, you know, volume of work if they didn't want to do it for the betterment of the kids in the district. You know, the approach that individuals might take to get there might be different. And in the process of collaborating, you might not always agree, and you know, it might be a hard-fought battle to actually ultimately get there. And you may not ever get consensus on anything. I mean, I don't, you know, obviously you're not privy to a lot of the meetings behind the scenes, but I don't doubt that, you know, not everything is just rubber stamp. But on the other hand, you know, so nothing in life is really going to be that easy. So I'm not really willing to go any farther with the question other than just, yeah, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Farmer.
So I'm going to take the position of not answering the question, but just me running with Anne Marie. I'm with somebody from the board, so I'm already there. But I've met other folks on the board. Look, what I bring to the table is a fresh perspective. You know, I'm one of the new residents of Soma, and I want to contribute my experience as an educator and be part of that. I want to be involved with the healthy debates that are going on, and I know that these next 3 years are going to be pivotal for all of us and for all of our children, so I want to be a part of that and provide, you know, that support from my experience. And then I also think I know diversity is very important to me. I've dealt with that all my life, and I want to make sure that, you know, as we're thinking about integration and we're thinking about those really hard tasks that we have ahead of us, that, you know, we have different perspectives on that. I want to be a part of that. Thank you.
It's just.
So, again, I will not be answering that question either. But what I can say is I do agree that the board, what they do today, and the people that are on the board work really hard. It's a thankless job. I don't think they're appreciated for what they bring to the table. But what I would have to bring to the table is the fact that I'm a listener. I'm a good leader. I respect our students first and foremost, our teachers, and then my peers and the superintendent that would be aligned with us. I think what's imperative is that everybody feels like their voice is heard, and sometimes that's not always the case. You see we're in a panel here of people that are louder or people that are quieter, and sometimes you just need somebody there that listens, and I'm just going to be that person on the board that listens and makes decisions based on what makes sense for us, simple decisions that make sense for the district, that make sense for the kids first, and you know, with rationale and with you know, just being realistic about what we can accomplish and where we want to go. And the fact that I care. I care about our community, I care about our children, and I think it's imperative that we have people that are on the board that are aligned for any reason except for that they care about what the students are going to get out of us being on board.
Thank you very much. Okay, so each candidate, raise your hand if you didn't get a question, just so that I make sure I'm not doing anybody out. Okay. Each candidate has had a chance to answer a question. All the other candidates have had time to rebut or give their own views on that question. So what we spoke about before we started is we're going to take the rest of the questions and the rest of the time we have left and kind of do a lightning round of 1-minute answers here for each question. For each, again, each of you gets 1 minute to answer the question. All right, so we'll go back through here. And, oh, yes. We'll start with the question that would have been for Mr. Julian. So just to figure out who goes first, and this time we'll go in the opposite direction as we go through. So I am not looking at too far. Okay, Mr. Navarro, you go first. So we'll start with Mr. Navarro, and we'll go around that way. Do you believe the traffic incident concerning board member Lawson Muhammad was handled correctly by the board? Do you agree with the decision to keep the matter sent by South Orange trustees to the board members private and only discussed with some board members? If not, how would you have acted differently? Mr. Navarro.
I'm not going to go back and dig up everything that happened in the past. However, like I said, my three-pronged approach is accountability, transparency, and dignity. And I think as a board, you need to operate with full transparency. We are serving the public. We need to be, we are role models for our children. Our children are watching. Whether we think they are not, whether we think they don't consider us role models, they see what adults do, and they mirror that behavior. And that's true whether it's on the Board of Education or whether it's in Washington, D.C., or whether it's at work, or whether it's at, your college roommates. And of course, having been a journalist, I'm a full supporter of sunshine laws and, public information. And so, addressing that aspect, I would absolutely opt for full transparency and open debate in a public setting where people can hear what the concerns are.
Thank you, Mr. Laskowski.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes.
Sure. I have the.
I want to make sure I understand what the person was asking.
Do you believe the traffic incident concerning board member Lawson Muhammad was handled correctly by the board? Do you agree with the decision to keep the matter sent by South Orange trustees to the board private and only discussed with some board members? If not, how would you have acted differently?
Not being privy to the information and how it was presented and what was shared or not shared by the board and by the South Orange trustees, I can't answer what they should or shouldn't have done because I wasn't there. The results of it, I can give you my opinion. I feel that we, are public figures, and if we're elected to a position by the public, we need to hold ourselves to a professional level of standard, and I would have a hard time if that was me, and I had done that. But again, I wasn't in that discussions. I don't have the data that they had or didn't have. They chose to withhold it. That was their decision.
Thank you. Ms. Cutler.
I think that you need to bifurcate the issue in that whatever happened before it all came public, we don't know. That said, I am a huge believer in transparency. You need to, anytime that you are faced with, do I tell or don't I tell? We tell our kids, tell us. We tell them all the time. So just from a transparency, I think that you need to make sure that that is a standard and one that we are excelling at as a board. Whether that's with the community or whether that's with each other. That has to be something that we're always involved with. The other part is, I think that the hardest part is the incident itself has had one more negative attachment to our two amazing towns. That if you Google our towns, it's there. So, my background, my professional life, I do communications. There's a way that we need to get past and have positive stories out there. So for that, I wish that it had been handled a little differently, because the negative fallout could have been controlled.
Ms. Josephine.
So, my perspective is, I don't know what the board and why or what they can and cannot share with regards to that incident. I agree with most of the panel that we are role models. We are extensions of our children. They look at us. We also have jobs every day that we have to go to. And in my job, I probably wouldn't have a job if something like that happened to me, or I was to behave in that manner. So I simply would say that you have to lead by example. And as a member of the board, you are committed to the public. Somebody elected you to be there. You should represent yourself and the public in a more upstanding manner. I can't criticize or judge anybody for how they felt or how that went down, but I just don't think it's not my place. My place is to simply say, lead by example. I would want the respect of the people that voted for me. In order to earn that respect, I think I'd have to carry myself with dignity and be respectful to others.
Thank you. Mr. Barton.
So I'm going to break this up into two answers. One answer is going to be, I found out about this in a dinner party, and it became such a dialogue on the negative aspects and the conflicts that's going on in our community. Like, we gotta stop all that. We have to be focused here on the positive and what we're doing for the kids. So, like, I'm not sure to the fullest extent on how it was handled. I just think, to your point, like, we need to focus on the positive. We need to focus on being, accountable. And if you're a public figure, people are watching. So you need to be careful of that. On the other side, we don't understand what the legal implications are that the board has, or the people within what the incident happened had to deal with. So there might be some information that shouldn't go out because legally it can't. So I don't know what was going on there, but that might be an implication of why some of that information wasn't out there. But I do agree on transparency, open dialogue, and accountability.
Thank you.
I don't remember which part came first at this point, but in terms of sort of a retroactive what if type situation, I'm not going to comment on that. I have no idea what the board was privy to. We have details that were put out there in terms of who would have done what, when, where. I'm not going to engage in kind of a over-the-shoulder kind of review of that whole incident. I think it's something that the district needs to put behind it and move forward. As far as the other side of it, I'm looking at it really from the standpoint of transparency. The one thing that drove me kind of crazy about the whole thing was the lack of transparency, which I think obviously everybody has mentioned before, I think, but also the way the chain of communication kind of went. There was a lot of bouncing back and forth, a lot of sort of grabbing and pulling at data and information that people were clearly looking for, and had the district, I think, gotten out in front of this early on in the process and circled around it, I don't think it would have turned into kind of the big media storm that it did, and that's the type of stuff I think we need to avoid in the future.
Thank you. All right, so we're just going to keep going around to Mr. Laskowski next. Okay. The question is, who, if anyone, is managing your campaign, and why did you choose this particular person or this particular group to run?
Irrelevant. It's an irrelevant question.
It's the questions that were submitted,
Well,
sir.
you don't, then you pull it out.
This question is irrelevant.
This question is absolutely relevant. This question is absolutely
So
relevant.
hold on, but before we all get into an argument,
You guys can talk.
the
Good.
the way this was formatted was upfront that all of the questions that were submitted online would be available to be asked. We didn't go through, we didn't pull questions out. This is what people submitted and wanted to have answers to. So hopefully that explains it a little bit better. Sorry about that, Ms. Laskowski. Would you like me to read the question?
Read the question, sure.
Who, if anyone, is managing your campaign, and why did you choose this particular person to run?
So the campaign that I'm involved with is 100% grassroots. It is a group of people that I've gotten to know, besides Narda, who I've known for a number of years, who just share a common bond that we would like to see change in the district. We're not big, we're pretty small. A couple of them are in the room. And I think I commend them for teaming up with some individuals that they did not know before the campaign. So I want to be clear, I've known Narda since her and I were in 5th grade. The people that are helping me with the campaign, some I've met less than 3 months ago. But we share a common bond. We care about the students of this district, we care about the towns that we live in, and we love this community. You want to know the names of the people? Just look at who supports me online. Look at who posts things about me. Those are the people that are part of my campaign. But I'm not affiliated with any group or any organization or anyone who's on the board or anything else. Grassroots across the board.
Thank you very much. Ms. Cutler.
All right, so note to self that I've been commenting on Mike Laskowski, so I'm done. Just kidding. So similarly, totally grassroots, that my campaign is managed by Chris, and Chris's campaign is managed by me. We don't have anybody else behind us. We are doing this solely on our own. We are our own campaign managers. It's interesting, I appreciate the statement about who's running your campaign and why that's irrelevant, and I appreciate why it's relevant. I think that there's a need for new voices, untethered voices. And if anything about this campaign, this election season, is about getting new thinking that is not going to be about repeating decision-making or pedagogy that got us into some of the situations where we're looking at a $127 million bond, we're looking at an achievement gap that continues to draw national attention. It is time, in the 18 years I've lived here, more than ever, that we need people who are truly untethered.
Thank you. It's just
So since everybody can say grassroots, I'm just not going to say grassroots. We're just homegrown.
You can be grass tops.
Okay. So Michael and I, we're totally homegrown. We have a couple people that we just met less than 3 months ago, pretty much, and they're not affiliated with anyone. Neither are we. We're just together because we want to make a difference. We want to make a change. And maybe their skill sets. You know, they like to support people that have the same mindset. But as far as why we are together and why we are homegrown, simply because we decided, hey, you grew up here, I grew up here. What would make a bigger impact? The people that want to stay here and people that grow here, they have more of a vested interest in what's happening in our district. So that's pretty much why we're together, and why we're homegrown, not affiliated with anyone, and just want to make a huge difference once voted in, if voted in.
Thank you.
So I am going to say grassroots because it's grassroots. So and I'm working with Anne Marie. So we're both working together on doing this. And what I'm bringing to the table is my family and these new families that are in the community. And she has a base that she works with. So we're working together to get the campaign going. And the reason why I focused on working with Anne Marie is there are three things that I care about that I heard her loud and clear: equity and access, this new superintendent, and thinking about leadership and how do we think about making sure that we have the right leadership within the organization. And I'm vested in the community, especially because my son is about to get into the district, and I want to make sure that for every young person as they go in, they have the best years, you know, that are coming to them. And then the final is the infrastructure. I keep on hearing about infrastructure. I saw the reports. It's an important thing that's going to happen in the next 3 years. I want to be a part of that and make sure that we do that right.
Thank you. Mr. Trasker.
Thanks. It's a simple question with a simple answer that Marion's already answered. There isn't one. There's no affiliation. There's no secret backing. There's no agenda. There's no anything. What you have is me pushing Marion to get on stuff, and Marion pushing me probably more often than not to get on stuff. And that's it. There's no history. There's no previous connection. Marion and I have announced that we are running together tonight for the first time. So this is something that we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, back and forth. But this is new. This is not anything other than two people who kind of share a similar vision for the district, share a similar approach in terms of how to go about changing certain aspects of the district, how to go about overseeing the superintendent search, the bond issuance with the capital plan, the integration and all of that. And beyond that, there isn't anything else, so as, you know, behind the curtain, so to speak. I mean, again, I said it before, what you see is what you get.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro.
Yeah, I'll make this brief. This is one of the questions that I was asked most often, and then often the first question that was asked, and there's nobody running my campaign. It's me. It's all me. I'm a nuts and bolts guy. I researched how to start campaigns, how to create fundraising committees, and I basically had heard from so many parents of young children who had never been to a board meeting, who were, you know, who don't have time, who haven't had time to research and look in and really get into the process of governing. And so, you know, this is something that I took on myself because I wanted to be an independent voice with an independent perspective, and I didn't want to tie myself to any voting block or a preconceived notion of how a board should be run.
Thank you very much. The folks that are watching on Facebook out there have asked that if each of the candidates can just state their name, because it's hard, because it's a wide shot.
Sure.
So we'll start down at this end. Mr. Farfan.
Okay. So just state my name?
Yeah, just state your name.
Javier Farfan.
Thank you.
Narda Green.
Marion Cutler.
I state your name. Mike Laskowski.
Bruno Navarro.
Christopher Traska.
Thank you very much. All right, so next question, we'll go to Marion first. Please tell us with a clear yes or no answer and without evasion whether or not you would vote to approve a split middle school configuration that would have students go through a 5-6 and then a 7-8 middle school.
already answered it, yeah.
All right, well, I feel like I'm wasting my 1 minute. I've already answered it, but I absolutely, all right, it was a yes, no? No.
Go ahead, Ms. Green.
I agree with Marion. No, I wouldn't support it. Again, we talk about transitions and who it's going to impact. It's going to impact the children that I look like, mostly, sadly enough, and I don't want that impact on any other children in the district. So additional transitions would not be good. Some of our children will be fine, but a lot of our children will not be fine, and we have to think about all the children of the district.
Considering all the children, I say no.
No.
I would be leaning in favor of it. I don't, you know, there are studies that actually say that transitions do not harm children. There's evidence on both sides of the issue. This is not a clear-cut data point. This is something that, you know, that is in dispute, and there are debates about this on a larger level. However, I am concerned that students who do need support get it. There needs to be a greater sharing of information, and professions. There needs to be greater support of children in making that transition. You know, some kids will be fine, other kids will need help, and I want to make sure that they get it.
No, I'm not a fan of it, in favor of it. And it was mentioned earlier, I think Chris mentioned it, so I'll give him credit. You have to look at, is this an infrastructure project that we have, capital expenditure, or is this an integration project that we have? Because they're two separate items. So I feel like we've looped in, we're going to modify the schools because of integration. If we're going to do that, we should do it because we need to integrate. But I don't think 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th is the right solution. We can do it at an earlier age in other schools. And again, it shouldn't be a capital expenditure to do it. Why do we need to do that? We could move kids around this district without that. So I am not in favor of 5, 6, 7, 8, and the studies that I have been shown and the studies that I've researched absolutely state that children that are already struggling from an achievement gap standpoint struggle even more with additional transitions when we don't have the support they need, when we don't have enough guidance counselors, when we don't have full-time social workers. So if we want to talk about it, that's the issues we have, and that has nothing to do with infrastructure.
Thank you. All right, so the next question will go to Ms. Green first. What is your plan and time frame for moving forward with the integration of our elementary schools?
So I can't say that I have a plan in moving forward with the integration of the schools, but what I can tell you again is that I've looked at Seth Gordon and spoken to teachers there, and I think that as a demonstration school that it used to be, we probably should consider it again. But with that said, it would need an anchoring. It would need it to be anchored with another school. Maybe that's Clinton, maybe that's Tuscan, in order to ensure that it survives. And I think if we look at it in that aspect, we can start with how we can integrate the kids, at least in the elementary schools.
Thank you. Mr. Carter.
That's a tough question. What is the plan? I don't have a plan yet. I think there's a couple of things that have to happen, right? So one is this hiring of a superintendent is going to be an important piece to the whole puzzle, because he or she will be pushing that agenda and communicating, making sure that everybody's accountable for the integration. So that's probably the primary thing that we should work on at the front end. And then from there, we have to assess, you know, the plan, create the plan, communicate the plan, and then roll it out. I feel in speaking to folks that sometimes there's not enough communication to the broader community and parents, and then there's a lot of questions that come up and hearsay about what the process is, what the policies are, what these plans are going to be. So I think over-communicating at the front end is going to be an important piece to this.
Thank you. Mr. Dresser.
Thank you. Do I have a plan? No, I'm actually waiting to see I had said before, the district's plan. Would I, if elected, even get a chance to vote on it, or at least do something about it before it comes to a vote? I'm not sure the timing actually even allows for that. What would I do is a very different question. What I would probably do is look toward not what we're at least looking at in terms of middle school. And as far as the elementaries go, it would, I've gone back and forth on it, but where I've kind of settled is keeping Seth Boyden, that model, but I think adding another magnet. Splitting it STEM and arts, I think, at this point would be the best way to go about doing it. I don't know that a language only type elementary magnet would work. I'd love to see it if it did, but I think there might be enough on the art side and on the STEM side to do it that way without sort of redrawing lines and moving all that around. But I have to see what the district is proposing at this point, and I haven't seen anything yet.
Thank you.
I do think the district's redistricting plan does begin to address racial disparities within the school district, and my concern is, as I said before, whether the students who need help receive it, and and I do understand that that there are some difficulties in implementing it. So we have to look at start times. We need to look at traffic patterns. We need to look at social support system within the school. But I do think that once, if everybody does have an equal stake in every one of the schools and every one of the buildings, that we're all going to be better off, not just from an educational standpoint, but also from a socioeconomic and cultural standpoint.
Thank you. Ms. Kowski.
I have to commend, the board's been evaluating these solutions for some time. And again, as Chris pointed out, we're waiting on the most latest and greatest integration effort, what it entails. I think one of the challenges is we gave too many options to the public to mull over. And that, I think, starts with the superintendent. The superintendent needs to be given a vision that the board has agreed on, and this is what we're going to be doing. And unfortunately, the superintendent has to be the one, he, she, or they, to actually call the shot on what we're doing. And if the board backs it, we move forward with it. And right now, we're kind of in limbo. And again, I don't know if we're going to have a chance to make those decisions. It could be decided before we even get a seat on the board. I've mentioned kind of what I felt about integration in elementary schools. We can do it with a few schools. I like the fact that what Narda mentioned regarding looking at creating a magnet school to complement the Seth Boyden. Seth Boyden seemed to be working very well, but unfortunately it wasn't a vision of the district. It wasn't implemented from the top down. It was being run by a principal who had some great ideas. That principal needs to be supported by the super. The superintendent needs to make sure all the schools are following that vision. So if we're going to do magnet schools, whether it's 2, 3, 4, or 6, it's got to be from the top down.
Thank you.
So level setting, if you will, we are expecting, Elizabeth Aaron was appointed as principal, as special assignment, and her specific task was to come up with an integration plan. And that plan is due to, the board is expected to have it, they've said that they're going to have it for October's board meeting. So what Mike and Chris had said, the six of us up here are unlikely to have an opportunity to vote on it. The plan is going to be there. In addition to Elizabeth Aaron, the board has also hired another consultant out of Temple University, specifically tasked with the integration plan. So there's a lot of work that's happening. So ultimately, when we get on the board, it's going to be about making sure that that work is implemented well, make sure that that plan is fully communicated to everybody in the district. That means parents as well as just residents, those without children in the district. And then we have to hold them accountable. We're really good as a district historically about making plans and not really good about holding ourselves accountable. So we're going to, come January, this plan should be done. So from a timeline standpoint, we should start communicating how those redistricting lines are going to be drawn come like February, March, so we can make sure that no one hits late July wondering where my child is going to school.
Thank you. Ms. Chisholm-Green?
She started.
She started.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can do it again.
So,
It's my turn, right?
It's your turn, yes. What is the biggest failure of the current Board of Education, and what would you do differently?
Wow, I don't know if I want to answer what's the biggest failure of the board right now.
Yes.
Look, they work very hard to do all this stuff and are volunteering their time, so I don't want to, you know, talk about anything negative that's going on. I think the bigger challenge that the board has now, that we, you know, whoever gets elected on it, is communication, you know, and making sure there's transparency in what's going on. There's a lot of plans coming to fruition in the next 3 years, and we need to make sure that from a communications perspective, everybody's fully aware of what's going on, how it's going to happen, and the accountability associated to that.
Thank you. Mrs. Trask?
I'm not going to get into individual decisions of the board. However, I think overall the biggest thing that's driven me crazy over time has been the lack of transparency, the lack of communication. I understand that the board, via its bylaws, which I've recently had a chance to go through in detail again, has one employee, the super, and that it looks at its role not as involved in the day-to-day. I think that needs to be tweaked a little bit. I think there are areas where the board can not micromanage, because you don't want to do that, not get into the administration of the district because they can't do that, not get into the weeds, but take a more active role publicly. I know there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes in committees and in various meetings. They do a tremendous amount of work. What does not happen is the public isn't aware of all of that. And I think a lot of the stuff that people complain about and take issue with, quite validly, is directly, can directly be attributed to just a lack of communication and a lack of transparency.
Thank you. Mr. Navarro?
Likewise, I'm not going to pick apart any one decision from the current Board of Education. However, I think it's important to look forward and learn from the past. And so in the selection of the superintendent, the next superintendent, I think there needs to be a thorough due diligence. We need to research, we need to really drill down into this person's history and their background, and just really see where they're coming from and unearth any skeletons in the closet or any questions that might arise later on. This is just good practice. I work for a risk management consulting startup firm, and we deal with issues of governance and background checks and security and transparency and communications risk, and all of these considerations have to be incorporated into the search for the next superintendent.
Thank you, Ms. Bilskowski.
I think the board has been facing a lot of challenges that it's hard to pinpoint the wins and the losses, but I think everyone across the board made it very clear. It's communication that can solve some of those issues. I would love to see more communication to the point where it's over-communicated. I'd also like to see communication about areas that we're struggling, areas that we need help. Let's not just communicate positive things. The board's responsibility is, again, to be directly responsible for hiring a superintendent, which is great for the new board members that get elected and for the current board that's going to be sitting next year. It's a great honor to do that. And hopefully we hire someone who's here for the next 5 to 10 years. The board's also responsible for being an advocate for the community and has to be involved in sharing information with the community within restrictions. We can do a better job of that. So let's call it what it is. There's challenges out there. I think we can do more.
Thank you, Ms. Booker.
Looking at the progress the board has been making, and that as a district we've been making, we're now addressing a lot of our legacy problems head on. Like we are about, there's actually just, one of the things I'm really excited about with this opportunity is there's so much opportunity with what we can do with the board. There's opportunity from the data that we're about to collect, from the integration we're about to put forward. We're about to become, or we have the opportunity, depending on how we mold it, to be a model. You talk about being a premier district. Let's hold ourselves up as that model. We're going to integrate, we're going to deal with failing infrastructure, we're going to deal with the achievement gap, we're going to communicate, community ambassadorship. There's just nothing but opportunity to get really meaty with what the board can do, with how we engage the community, not just parents. Like we need to realize parents only make up 6,000 of the, there are 6,000 kids, 7,000 kids. There are 42,000 people who live in our district. So we have got to start to really pull in the community. We are going to be the anchor. Let's really take advantage of that opportunity.
Thank you.
So I agree with everybody on the panel. I can't pinpoint and discuss any failures, but what I can say is that I'd like us to be a board that can be more proactive and less reactive. I think we are making strides now, but those are based on things that forced our hand. I think that's more of a reactive force of hand. I think had we thought before and had this time and said, yeah, our buildings are falling apart, we need to work on that. Yeah, there's a problem with integration, we need to start fixing it. We need to chip away at these things earlier. We are reacting to them now. And I'm proud of the fact that we are addressing them now. But I'd like to be a board that we would have anticipated or be able to handle these things in a more proactive manner.
Okay. This next question, and let's see if we can do one more after it. Oh, time's up.
Yeah.
All right. All right. This is yours, Tresca. Considering the issues the district has, what skills, etc., do you believe the new superintendent must possess?
He's got to be a magician. I think there's a number of issues that he's got to deal with sort of at a high level from a management perspective. He's got to be an effective manager, obviously, because he's got scores of people in the various functions beneath him, each of which has its own issues, has its own history of long-standing issues, many of which are in the process of being fixed and addressed, in other cases not as much. He's got to be able to multitask. He needs to be able to get up to speed pretty damn quickly. This isn't the type of role that somebody can just put their toe in the water and wait in. There are going to be a lot of things in the fire when he or she, or they step in. You have to be able to manage that, and that's not going to be easy, but they're going to have to juggle many, many tasks at once. And I'll just add, before I turn it over, that their background and their experience, they must have a history of doing this. Without that, I think we're going to be in some trouble.
Thank you, Mr. Navarro.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Christopher said. But the main idea, the main thing that I want to see in a superintendent is vision. Somebody needs, whoever takes over this position needs to have just an amazing grasp of the issues, an ability to hit the ground running, an ability to build consensus, to reach out to the community. They have to be an excellent communicator. They need to be cognizant of all the unique issues that Maplewood and South Orange are going through, and but most of all, they need to be an effective manager and an amazing educator. And I think that's a pretty tall order, but you know, it is possible. That person's got to be out there.
Well, the individual has to be up for a challenge. That's given. But I think what makes it a great opportunity for someone is that we have a great community that's extremely welcoming and gives it a diverse look at the world that we live in. So this individual should be able to come in with experiences and that they've learned from in their career. Of course they need to have extensive leadership skills. They need to be a phenomenal manager and a communicator. Those are things they have to have, right? What we want someone that's going to look at this as the long-term play. This is where they're going to come and stay for the next 10 to 15 years. This is not a stepping stone district. If you're coming here for 3 years and want to move on, that's not the person we need. We need someone that's going to look at this and say, I can make this district the best district in New Jersey. We've got 7,000 students, and I want to be part of it. It's going to be very challenging to recruit someone to come here. That is absolutely true. But I think if anyone does take the time to look at this district, that's what they're going to see. They're going to see an opportunity to be part of something special. So we got to make sure that person believes that they can actually do something. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of leeway for them to do it because we're a very demanding district.
Thank you, Ms. Keller.
Knowing how much change lies in front of us, and whether that change is from the bond to the schools, to the integration, to the redistricting, it's all change. And it is about vision. We need a change agent. We need someone who's coming here and sees the opportunities that have been created. Dr. Ficarro, while I have not always agreed with things he has done an amazing job setting our district up for someone to come in and put their thumbprints on it. We have 6, 7, 8 key interim posts right now, and that's been on purpose, where Ficarro has set up that he does not want his people in place and someone just takes over running the show. That someone who comes in here is going to be has to be so unique that they are going to put key leadership roles, handpick their own key leadership people to be part of our change. So we need someone who definitely comes in with the vision, who sees the opportunities for what they are, that are long-term and career-defining, if not fully legacy-defining.
Thank you. Ms. Chisholm.
So I echo the same sentiments that most of everybody here says. The superintendent's probably going to have to be a huge risk taker. It's going to be a risk to come to our district, to take on the challenges that they face when they get to our district, he, she, whoever. And I think they have to understand that. I think they also have to understand the diversity of our community and want to be a part of that change that we want to effect. I think naturally they should be a born leader, a born communicator, effectively at least. I think they need to understand that their relationship with their board and the community is important, but of course, most importantly, that their students are number one. We need to have someone who has experience, and that experience can't just be, you know, he has to have some principal experience preferably. Potentially we, you know, have some experience as far as the sizing of our district, if possible, and that's probably very challenging for someone to come into.
So I wrote down a list of words that I think that I'm looking for, and when we're thinking about the superintendent. Committed, we want to make sure they're there for the long term. Has a vision, is a motivator, has operational experience, has change management experience, is empathetic to the parents, but also to the teachers and what they need to, what they're dealing with and how to get them revved up for the vision that he has. Knows how to prioritize, knows how to communicate, and is an educator.
Thank you. So I want to throw it out to you guys. We do have a few more questions if you'd like to keep going. The other option is if you'd like to mill around a little bit with the folks who come out tonight. That's your choice if you'd like to keep going. Or
Who do you guys want? You're committing here tonight. Who would you guys want?
Let's mill.
I like
Yeah, I love that
to
mill, yeah.
okay.
The people have spoken.
People have spoken. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.